he wants Brandon Ayuk. But they are about to take a $900,000 quarterback, and if you believe Bill Barnwell, pay him $65 million a year. It's the biggest increase of any contract in the history of football. It's got to be. It's got to be.
A few things. One, I don't think Purdy's getting 65. I think it'll be more like 55 to 6. It'll be an insane number, but I don't think it's going to be 65. Two, Lynch's quote just reminded me of the infamous Shanahan quote, where I forget exactly what the question was. It was related to Jimmy. And he's like, can you guarantee Jimmy is going to be on the roster? I think it was about Jimmy. And he's like, I can't guarantee I'm going to be alive tomorrow.
We might not be here on Sunday. We might not be. We all could be dead by Sunday.
And I know I'm butchering that, but like that was sort of the vibe. And I think, yeah, Lynch could have said absolutely not. I think it's something
he didn't.
that.
Why?
Right.
Why didn't he?
I think it's a little bit like, if you want to read in between the lines and say, okay, it's not just him being earnest and saying, yeah, like, I'm not going to fully guarantee it. It could be, if you want to interpret it, that like it's a little bit of a jab at Ayuk, like, you're not indispensable. Like, we could trade you. I don't know how that really helps the 49ers leverage or Ayuk's leverage, which is why I have trouble, knowing what to make of it. I honestly think it's a rare, like, Lynch kind of just being like, yeah, I'm not going to 100% rule it out. In other words, like, Nick Bosa is always off the table. Brandon Ayuk isn't in that category. I think that's one simple way to read it. But it's hard because I don't think the 49ers have any interest in dealing Ayuk unless it was for another wide receiver, which wouldn't make any sense. So, unless like Pearsall shows up and just dominates and they feel really good about it, I have no reason to believe that they're going to trade him. So, like, trying to suggest that, I think, is just a little odd.
Yeah, it's a weird thing though. When you could put when you could silence all, and he knows, believe me, he's heard all those rumors.
Yeah.
He's reading them all. You can silence all that. He's going to be a Niner. Even if you didn't guarantee it, you could be like, he's absolutely going to be a Niner. I guess I can't guarantee it because I can't read the future. But in my mind, he's absolutely going to be. No, he didn't even say anything. He really didn't say any of that either. He's just like, you know what? There are no absolutes. There are no absolutes. Yeah. What happens if Ricky Pearsall's a stud? What happens if Jacob Cowing's a stud? What happens if Deebo Samuel just has an amazing, camp and an amazing year? What if, it just, there's a lot of, what if all of a sudden you had an injury at another part of your team and, you needed a player at a certain position? That could change things. To me, the whole Ayuk, will he be traded? Will he not be traded? I don't think they want to trade him. I think they want to keep him. I've looked at every single team that has shown interest. And to me, there's really only two teams that make sense. None of the NFC teams make sense because why would you trade Ayuk to an NFC team? I mean, I've seen people say trade him to Detroit. What? Excuse me? Trade him to Detroit? You might as well go move to Detroit if you trade him to Detroit, right? I mean, if you give Detroit Brandon Ayuk, then you deserve to not go to the Super Bowl for the next 5 years. Because they're probably
that just feels like somebody's been playing Madden too much, and they're like, I don't care who I trade. It's about my value, which is not how anything works.
So Detroit, no. Green Bay, no. Dallas, no. Washington, no. The Rams, no. Anybody who lived through the Charles Haley can easily say that's, you just don't do it. But to me, the deal that makes tons of sense, and I think it's a smart deal, and I think it's a good deal, and it's a deal that I think the Niners ought to do. It's trade Brandon Ayuk with Cam Latu, who's been a bust to this point, and Joshua Dobbs, who doesn't look like much, to be honest, to the Steelers, and in return, get back Justin Fields, who I think in this offense would be very exciting. He's a lot more exciting than Dobbs and Allen and Mordecai. Darnell Washington, who would be a big powerhouse blocking tight end to replace Charlie Warner. So now you can run the ball. And Peyton Wilson, the linebacker they just drafted from NC State. Now you got a replacement for Greenlaw. You got a backup in case Purdy goes down. You got a big defensive tight end or a big blocking tight end. And then if it's not enough, because some people would say, "Oh man, you're trading a Pro Bowl wide receiver for a backup quarterback, a backup tight end, and a rookie linebacker." I don't love it. Okay, so if you feel like it's an unfair trade, add in a 2025, day 2 or day 3 pick, round 2, round 3, round 4, conditional on how Ayuk looks this year, whatever you want to do there. Pittsburgh gets Ayuk. They get a replacement tight end. They get a replacement quarterback. The Niners get a much better backup quarterback. So if they do lose Purdy for 6 or 7 weeks, the season's not cooked. They get a big-time blocking tight end to go with Kittle. So now you can really, Darnell Washington's a house. And I just get a hunch that Peyton Wilson is going to be a very good NFL linebacker. He was a very good NC State linebacker. And if I'm trading a 26-year-old Brandon Ayuk, I want a very good young football player, not just backups. I want a very good young football player, either in the form of draft picks or in players. And since you're the Niners inside your Super Bowl window, I'd much prefer players. And to me, that's very fair. Ayuk, Latu, and Dobbs to the Steelers for Peyton Wilson, Darnell Washington, Justin Fields, and maybe a conditional pick. What do you think, Jake? I know you never see trades involving multiple players in this kind of thing. I'm not asking you for the likelihood, but what do you think of that return for Ayuk? Because you don't need, in my mind, if you have Pearsall and Cowing and you got Debo looking great, and you got other guys like Ronnie Bell and Tay Martin and other receivers that look good too that you're going to likely cut. What do you think? Peyton Wilson, Darnell Washington, Justin Fields, and a 2nd or 3rd round pick next year. Would you do it?
No.
I wouldn't do it.
No. I love where your head's at, by the way. I wish the NFL, I think one flaw with the NFL is it doesn't do like NBA trades like this where there's multiple players getting moved. Like, grow up, like make some weird trades. Like, you're all about entertainment. Get weird with it. And I'm not to say that 49ers wouldn't get value in that trade. But I think, they passed on Justin Fields when they could have drafted him. And so I don't think Shanahan would be interested in what he's done. His delivery's slow. He's not the sort of quarterback Kyle would want, which is to say Dobbs has been terrible. And I don't think he's providing any.
I've been not very impressed by Dobbs, Allen, and Mordecai hasn't even gotten out there. But Dobbs and Allen, to me, so far, and the more I look at them, the more I think they can't do the job.
Allen's looked fine to me. Not been impressed with him, but I think he's been okay. Dobbs, I'm like, there's balls that are just a few yards off. He's thrown 2 picks on underthrown go routes. Like, it's pretty concerning. And it could be a situation where they end up just eating the $2 million that they guaranteed him at the start. But that's not a great look. He really just doesn't look like he fits or like he totally gets it. Darnell Washington, I think, is like a really interesting player. I think if the 49ers value to backup tight end a little bit more, that would be intriguing. Peyton Wilson is intriguing. I'm not totally sold on Devondre Campbell at this age with his wear and tear. D. Winters has been, I guess we'll talk about him, but he feels more like a 3rd linebacker. Maybe he can prove that he's big enough, but Greenlaw feels more wide, more muscled up, stout for that position. I don't know if Winters has that, but I just don't think you're going to trade Ayuk for anything that is not immediately making you better, and trading Ayuk doesn't make you better. Like, there's such a limited number of players that would make you better to acquire. And the way he elevates his offense, the way he can run every single route in the route tree, separate against man coverage in a way that Debo cannot, and it's why they lost the Super Bowl, amongst many reasons. And they kept going back to him, even though he's getting clamped by Trent McDuffie. And Debo's looked great in camp, but he does not separate versus man coverage. He's got limited routes. He can run effectively. Ayuk can run just about everything, and he's successful at everything. So it's hard for me to see a way that that makes you any better in a window you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now. Right now.
So the big story: Trent Williams hold out, Brandon Ayuk hold in. We then saw Isaac Guerendo have a couple of very impressive runs, and then he went down with what looked to be a painful. It looked like a lower ankle sprain, to be honest, but who knows?
He was holding his hammy. He was holding his hammy
Oh,
pretty
it was
hard.
the hammy. It was the hammy. That's right.
Yeah, he was. I was
It was the
watching him
hammy.
to the left.
It was a
Yeah.
power, and that's a concern because he's got big, powerful hammies. But
Yeah.
three rookies to me, if you wanted to say, okay, what's been the most meaningful revelation of the first couple of days? Okay, we could talk about the holdouts, and we already have. But then it's three rookies. It's Guerendo with the hamstring injury, but before the hamstring injury, he looked amazing. It's Malik Mustafa, who had one of the most savage interceptions I think I've ever seen. And then Jacob Cowing, who's running around and just looks terrific. Ball skills, speed, really good footwork, really good balance. He just looks like a guy who's just ready to contribute, like not like in a year or later this year, but like week one. He just looks like a guy who's ready to contribute right away. So to me, those three rookies really, really stood out. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, you're a little bit more sold on Cowing than I am, but I saw he also just hasn't been that involved, and I got to see him, with pads on, what he looks like against NFL players because whenever I see a guy who's smaller than me, I have questions. I think it's
Right.
fair. Like I think about if I was out there, I would die. So when I see Cowing out there, granted he's got crazy speed, great measurable, super shifty. I need to see it. But today on a swing pass, he just scooted down the sideline, uh, and you're like, oh, it's like 10 yards off a little swing pass in the blink of an eye. So I've been impressed with that. Mustafa has obviously been great. Talked about him before. I just think safety is a position that has the biggest variance on this team. It could be a major weakness for them, or it could be a sneaky good position where all of a sudden you can run three safety big nickel with Mustafa, Jair Brown, and have Hufanga basically like the prime version of Jamal Adams, where he's a safety, but he's really a blitzing linebacker. Like, I think that in an ideal world, if all those three guys are firing and you got Brandon Staley dialing it up, you got a really interesting safety group with a lot of physicality, a lot of juice. I think that's the ideal for the 49ers. And then Guerendo, it's a bummer because I think he's a guy who really needs reps. I think
Yeah.
he's super raw. Even after all the time he spent in college, I'm not sure he really knows how to play the running back position, naturally. But you give him the ball in space, and he's like a monster. He's a long, fast strider who's like muscled up. I think he'd be the perfect kick returner for them with his new kick return rules. We talked about that before. So if they don't have that, um, we'll see how long he's out. But if it's a hamstring injury, it's going to cost him a few weeks. And with a guy who's that explosive, it's a concern. It could end up like a Cam Latu PUP situation where just because of numbers, he doesn't really get a chance this year, and it's a huge bummer. I think they want to avoid that and see what he has because he's so explosive, and they probably want to avoid that at all costs. But we'll see.
Shanahan also had some really complimentary things to say about D Winters. I don't know if you saw any of that. Let me see if I
Yep.
can call that up. But yeah, I mean, really good stuff. You know, D Winters, Jalen Graham. I thought Tatum Bethune has looked good running around the first couple days. And I don't love what I'm seeing out of Devondre Campbell. I really don't. And I know, you know, it's early and this and that. Devondre, he just doesn't quite look right to me. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
what
mean,
Devondre. I'm a
the
little
int
concerned about Devondre Campbell, to be honest.
I've been concerned. I mean, that's the reason they went for Eric Kendricks first is, um, well, obviously Staley's familiar with him, but uh, with Campbell, it's like if you're getting the best of him, great, but you're not getting the best of him. I mean, he's a guy who's just had so many injuries. I think he said last year, he's like, "I'm done playing through injuries," which when a player makes a statement like that, they've just been dealing with stuff for the longest time. He just hasn't been right in a few years, and we'll see. I think by default, he's probably the guy that starts next to Fred Warner, but I think that door is wide open for somebody else to come in and take that job. And as much as we want to assume that, Greenlaw is just going to be back in time, you got no idea how long it's going to take him to be back if he's going to be anywhere near what he was. And Achilles is like the worst possible thing that could happen for a guy that's explosive and sideline to sideline like he is. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think that could be a problem area for them. And that linebacker spot is going to be really, really important for them to look at. Again, they're not going to run too much base, but they need to find somebody if Campbell does not look right.
I agree. I agree because I mean, if you really think about it, Warner and Greenlaw controlled the entire second level by themselves. And now you're taking out Greenlaw and to try to, unless you're going to change your defense up, you're going to ask that those two secondary level linebackers to cover that entire second level. And it's just a big challenging thing to do. It's not easy. And Greenlaw and Warner together can do it and they can make it look easy, but you take Greenlaw out of the mix, and I think it's going to be a real challenge. Now, I love Jalen Graham. I think Graham looked great again today. We'll see. We'll see. Graham looked great last year in the preseason. We've heard good things about Winters. Bethune, I thought, in the reps that he got today, and he was taking the last reps because he's the youngest guy in the unit. He looks real natural. He really does. All right, big deal, small deal, or no deal? Ronnie Bell today dropped 2 punts. Is it a big deal that he dropped 2 punts? Is it a small deal? Is it no big deal at all?
I would say it's a small deal. I mean, he didn't look great returning punts, last year, so it's not a huge surprise. But you know, they need to have an answer at punt returner, and it's not promising. It's like you gotta convince me that someone can do it, and maybe it's like Jacob Cowing. We'll see, but it's a small deal. It's not nothing. I'm not that concerned about it. But I'm not like feeling enthused for the 49ers about the possibility of Ronnie Bell returning punts.
I think it's kind of a big deal because Ronnie Bell has got to show he's not a burner. He's not a big receiver. He's not a guy that you can just say, Chris Conley, you can play him on coverage units. He's a bigger, faster, more physical athlete. Ronnie Bell's got to be the sure-handed guy.
Yeah.
I mean, him and Trent Taylor are got to be sure-handed. If Trent Taylor's dropping balls, he's cut. If Ronnie Bell is dropping balls, he's cut. So to me, I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal for Ronnie Bell. I think Ronnie Bell's got to almost be perfect because he's got to earn the trust of this team, the special teams unit, coordinator, Schneider, Shanahan. The one thing that they have an abundance of options, it's return men. Do you want Garendo? You got him. You want, Ronnie Bell? You got him. You want Trent Taylor? You got him. You got speeds guys like Danny Gray. You've got running backs with speed like Garendo. You've got, running backs who are sure-handed like Cody Schrader. You got Juice himself, who's a fullback, who's very sure-handed. So, I mean, if you're Ronnie Bell and you're not a burner, man, you better catch the ball. And he didn't today.
Yep.
So I would say it's a big deal. Another thing I thought was kind of interesting. No Greenlaw. The starting 2 linebackers were Warner and Devondre Campbell. When they went to a 3 linebacker 4-3 look, the third linebacker was Curtis Robinson. What did you make of that? So their starting 3 linebackers are Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, and Curtis Robinson, ahead of Bethune, ahead of Winters, ahead of Graham. I was shocked by that.
It didn't surprise me. I mean, you remember, you go back to, I want to say it was 2 years ago, Curtis Robinson was like a surprise guy that they used an extra roster spot on to get onto the roster, and then they put him on IR, but they like made an effort to make sure they could keep him. So they liked him from the start. He hasn't shown a ton, but he's got a great frame. I think I'm pretty sure I've seen them rep him at middle linebacker behind behind Warner, learning from him. So it's not like a huge surprise, because he's a guy that's, no one's going to be like, ooh, is this the next guy? I think it's just somebody who's been in the system for a while. They don't want to give anything to some of these young players, without them really earning it. And also, it allows Winters and Graham to sort of figure it out on their own in the second unit. So I think it's mildly interesting, but I'm not that shocked by it.
Herm Edwards told John Lynch that Ricky Pearsall is the kind of football personality where he overworks.
Yeah.
And that you've got to protect him from him. And that, the hamstring injury that he has now, it's like things like that where you got to almost protect him from him. It's good to know for sure. There are guys who just, spend too much time in the batting cage, too much BP, too much practice. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, there have been times when I've done radio shows where I get a half hour into the show and I'm like, I over prepared.
Yeah.
I over prepared for the show. And that's not good either, because you just want to get so much information out there that
Right.
you're not, it's like you over
You're not
prepared
being
for
as
the show.
present. Yeah, you're not listening
you're
the
not-
way you should. Yeah.
You're not having a conversation with Jake Hutchinson. You're now putting out all kinds of points that you wanted to put out, and they're good points,
right?
Which is because you did all the research. But it's sometimes I'm the kind of person that, let's say I'm doing a pregame show, I keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding and adding and adding. I never subtract.
Oh,
so
Larry, I spent the last few months like writing a book, and it just kept fucking going and going. Excuse my language, kept going and going and going, and it just ended up at like 500 some pages. And it's just like you keep adding. You're like, I have to stop at some point, but you get addicted to it and you just can't stop. You're like, this is all so good. I got to keep going.
And Pearsall is that kind of guy where it sounds like he just is running routes and running routes and running routes. And according to Herm, he says he told Lynch, hey man, this guy will overwork and you got to protect him from himself, and you got to hold him off a little bit. And I mean, you'd rather have that. You know what? This guy works way too hard and you got to slow him down. Then this guy doesn't work at all, and you got to go hunt him down and drive him to the facility. And it's like he doesn't want to be here. I mean, that's a bigger problem. But this is also a problem because it's a long year. I mean, you're showing up for camp around around the middle of July. If everything goes right, you're still playing in the middle of February.
Yep.
It's a long year.
Yeah, I think that doesn't shock me at all about Pearsall. I mean, the amount of training he does, like, visibly, and you just watched in OTAs, he was at a different pace from everybody else. He's going like McCaffrey, right? He's going 100% all of the time. And I think there is an art to that of like, you actually can't, that's not sustainable. So, I wonder if him being around McCaffrey and some of those other guys who are just actually obsessed with working. Like, I think McCaffrey's genuinely the guy he could learn from the most in that respect. And like, how do you manage this desire to be on all the time and sharpen yourself up all the time without overdoing it? I think that is something that way better than the alternative, but it is something that coming to the NFL, he's going to have to learn. And I think he'll be all right. Just, he's a freak athlete, works super hard on himself. So I think his body will recover, but it's definitely a concern. It's not nothing.
Aqib Talib went on with Kay Adams and praised Brandon Ayuk, which was great to hear. But then kind of took a side swipe at Brock Purdy. I mean, it's funny. These things never end. Let's share the screen here. This should be good. This is Kay Adams with oh, here we go. I've got this from here we go. It's Kay Adams here with Aqib Talib.
He's probably my top 3 receivers right now. If you get him.
Hold on a second. Hold on, Aqib. Bring it on back. Bring it on back. Here we go. We get it from the start. Aqib Talib, the former Kansas Jayhawk, who ran a little hot in his day, played with the Patriots. Great player, outspoken football man. Here he is.
Ayuk is emerging. I think he's probably my top 3 receivers right now. If you get him with a real quarterback, he can go crazy.
Brandon Ayuk is your as a top 3 receiver?
Man, he's just I don't really go off the stats. I go off the player and his body control, his routes, his hands, his speed. He can easily be a top receiver in the league. If you put him on a team and you make him the focal guy, he'll go crazy. Ayuk is emerging. I think he's probably my top 3 receivers right now. If you get him with a real quarterback, he can go crazy.
You get him with a real quarterback? What's up with the real quarterback?
Yeah, I think
you get him with a real quarterback. I mean, what? Brock Purdy should just be like, hey, Aqib Talib, fuck off. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's just, he always takes it in stride, and it doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, it's like, if this guy were, I mean, why is this guy so disrespected? He's the exact same size as Jalen Hurts. He's Jalen Hurts. He's 6 feet, 6'1", pretty athletic, tough, leader, man of faith, quiet, but serious, a real leader. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's so similar to Jalen Hurts. I think he's better than Hurts, to be honest. But
I agree.
He's very similar to Jalen Hurts. You don't see all these people like openly questioning Jalen Hurts all the time, but Purdy, it's like, dude, what do you need to see? The guy, the first year he came off the bench, he ran the table and he won all his playoff games until he got knocked out. The next year he goes to the Super Bowl and they lose to Mahomes. The guy's lost 2 playoff games. One was the Eagle game. He was in there for 6 plays. The other was the Super Bowl to Mahomes. Other than that, he's 17-4 in the regular season. Other than that, those 2 games, he's won every playoff game he's ever started. What are we talking about?
I think the thing with Purdy, a few things. His college tape wasn't great, and so people go back to that, and they go back to the fact that he was drafted late, and people can't get over that. And they're like, well, if that was the case, then he's not good. Like, I think people are just obsessed with that. I think another thing is like his vibe. Like, it would be honestly, when he's on the field, he's got that, like, he's got juice. Like, you see him, he gets hyped up. But I think when he gets paid, I would like to see if Purdy starts talking a little bit of shit. I don't know if that's in his character, but I think like you get, like a $55 million a year contract, he might open up a little bit more. I think that sort of, he comes off a little bit like I don't know if like a choir boy, something like that. Like, he's so buttoned up. He just wears like a standard, cheap shirt to every game. Looks like he's, going to study. I think
he's getting dressed at Kohl's or TJ Maxx.
Right. And he will probably get sponsored by them at some point, which would be incredible. But I think that's part of it. Like Hurts has like a very clear swag. Like, he's a dude who's, led the Eagles. They also had a bad offense and he had to carry them in certain respects. I don't think he reads the game all that well. But like, he's got a swag to him that's very clear. Purdy, he just doesn't have that same energy, He's just a quiet little dude, quiet man of faith, and I think part of that, and the fact that his draft stock and his valuation, his college tape wasn't that great, is people just like can't buy into it because he doesn't have elite measurables. And I think there is genuinely like sort of a fetishization of like people having elite arm talent. And if you don't have elite arm talent, you can't be a good quarterback, which is not true. It's much harder to thread the needle that Purdy's threading, right? To be a great quarterback, relying on processing, kind of like Drew Brees, where you're not this great freak athlete, but you know where the ball should go. You understand timing. You have place and you have functional arm talent. I think he doesn't quite get the credit he deserves for his like short area burst, like his pocket presence and ability to like feel pressure, spin off it, and find space is something that I think elevates him from just, the little game manager or whatever people think he is. Like that is very real. It's a very legitimate skill. And it's why he is a great quarterback, because he's not just standing in the pocket and relying on, you know, just timing like Jimmy did. He can escape, he can buy time, he has that ability. But again, it's not a rocket. He's not throwing it like Justin Herbert. He doesn't have that same crazy skill set. And so because of that, because of all the things I just mentioned, I think people will forever have a hard time, fully buying into Purdy, and will kind of hope and wait for the wheels to come off. And I'm not sure they will.
He's a very interesting player, isn't he? He's really one of the most interesting players. I mean, drafted last, been to a Super Bowl, been to 2 NFC Championship games. I was looking at some of the Warren Sharp stats getting ready for the season this last weekend. Warren Sharp ranks the Niners offensive line 17th in the NFL. So, let's just take that as fact. So now not only does Brock Purdy have some of the best stats in the league, he's got some of the best stats in the league, operating behind one of the worst lines in the league. I thought it was really interesting too. The couple stats that really jumped out. Warren Sharp had the list of the teams in the league that had the most and the least offensive plays that gained 30 plus yards last year. The Niners had the most in the entire league with 36. Green Bay was second with 33. Carolina was last with 12. 12. That's just absolutely unbelievable. So, Purdy's an amazing, he's done an amazing job. The other stat that I thought was interesting, pass rate inside the 10-yard line. Warren Sharp had it. The Jets, just how bad Hackett is. The Jets, despite losing Aaron Rodgers, passed the ball inside the 10 last year 73% of the time, far and away the most in the league. You wonder why people are like Hackett's a moron. The Niners, very run heavy. The Niners passed 37% of the time inside the 10. And that was, where did that rank? That was ranked almost in the bottom of the league. Philly, of course, runs the ball tons inside the 10, and they passed the ball only 26% of the time inside the 10-yard line. I thought that was kind of interesting. The other one that jumped out was the Warren Sharp stat on completion percentage on passes of 20 plus yards. Brock freaking Purdy, the quarterback that many were calling dink and dunk, 55% completion percentage on passes of 20 plus yards downfield, number 1 in the NFL by a wide freaking margin. And to put that in perspective, he's got 55% on passes 20 plus yards down the field. You think of Jalen Hurts, he's at 32%. Lamar Jackson at 32%. Patrick Mahomes at 28%. Mac Jones was the lowest in the league at 8%. But Purdy, number 1 in the NFL. Number 1 completion percentage on passes of 20 plus yards. So in a lot of ways, nobody sees it. People still to this day, they just don't see it with Brock Purdy. Jake, I got one last Niner question, and then I got 2 last ones for you, and then we'll jet. Let's talk Purdy for a second. He does look great. And there were people that said he couldn't get better from year 1 to year 2, which was just preposterous. And there's people that have made that same claim this year. I can't get better. This is his first off season where he gets field reps and, he gets film reps inside, and then he can take it to the field, and he can do film reps and field reps, I should say, with his receivers. And you can see he's in a good rhythm already with Cowing, and you could see it at the end of the minicamp. He was in a good rhythm with Pearsall already. I think Brock Purdy's bigger, stronger, smarter, in better lockstep with his receivers. I think he's almost guaranteed to have a better year. But if he has a better year, what are we talking about? 4,000 yards, 30 plus touchdowns, less than 10 picks, maybe winning the MVP, maybe going to the Super Bowl. But I think he's going to have a huge year. But here's the question. If the 49ers, last year they had Darnold and Allen, 2 and 3. If the Niners lost Brock Purdy, not for the year, but let's say early in the year, but they lost him for like 2 months, what do you think Shanahan would actually do at quarterback? Would he roll with Dobbs? Would he roll with Allen? Would he play Tanner Mordecai? Would he trade for Justin Fields? Would he try to sign Tom Brady out of the booth? What do you think? Would he try to get, I don't know, Gardner Minshew away from the Raiders? What do you actually think? Let's just role play for a second. It's July 25th. Let's say it's September 25th. We're now 2 months from now. And the Niners are going to lose Brock Purdy, but for like 8 weeks. He's coming back. So it's not like you need somebody forever. You just need, but you don't want to go 0-8 because you go 0-8, you're not making the playoffs. So you just want to win some games. Do you think that you can win games with Dobbs or Allen? I don't. I do not believe the 49ers can win any games with any quarterback not named Brock Purdy on their roster right now.
I think they can win games. Can they win a lot of games? No. Like if you're saying, okay, 8 games, no Brock Purdy, how many will they win? I would set the over under at 3.5. I think that is probably the line. Like I could see them maybe winning 3 or 4 at most with, Allen and Dobbs. And as I say that, I don't believe it. I just think there's a chance you could win 1 or 2 with Allen. Eventually he probably gets benched and you go to Dobbs, you try and get lightning in a bottle. He sucks usually, but can get 1 great game out of him. I think you could eke 3 wins out of that. But if you really what I think Shanahan would do in that situation, if it's like he's out 2 months, I think you maybe go trade for Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is a guy they looked at in the past. I think he's got a $5 million cap hit with the Panthers. That's a guy that I think Shanahan would be like, I know what Andy Dalton is. I'm familiar with that. Let's go make a trade with the Panthers. Maybe David Tepper is against that after the McCaffrey deal. But, they gave the Panthers what they wanted on that. And McCaffrey is just still incredible. Yeah, I think Andy Dalton would be the logical answer.
That's interesting. I love the idea of Fields, but Fields is a wild stab for sure.
Yeah.
All right, 2 last questions. Baseball trade deadline's coming up within 5 days. And the Mariners, if I'm sitting here seeing this correctly, have just traded for Randy Arozarena. And there's a lot of talk that Farhan needs to make the playoffs or he's fired at the end of the year. And Blake Snell looks like he is absolutely primed for a massive second half. He really looks great. He's had 3 strong starts in a row. This is all since coming off the injured list. This is the reigning Cy Young Award winner. He signed a 2-year deal with the Giants. His contract includes an opt-out after this year. So the Giants could trade Snell now and possibly get a big return. And if you know your baseball, you know that there's second half pitchers, and this guy's one of them.
Yep.
So what do you think? What's the plan for Farhan? Does he sell on Snell and Ray and Cobb and maybe Doval and Chapman and try to get some young players? To me, if he made 2 or 3 good trades for young players and then came back next year with Harrison and Wisenhunt and Birdsong and I think the fans might be excited about that. I think if they could get a middle of the order bat or some young prospects, I think I would try to sell, but I might even be willing to trade a prospect or 2 if I could get the right controllable, position player bat. What do you think? What's Farhan going to do?
I think they're going to try and thread that needle of selling one of those guys, probably Snell if they can, and also try and like acquire someone who's a lukewarm hitter. I think based on everything we've seen from the Giants, right, in the Farhan era, is they're going to be lukewarm. It's going to be tepid. It's going to be, okay. That is how I feel like they're going to come out of that, where you're not going to make the move that's going to say, okay, this is a clear direction, because they haven't had a clear direction all year. That's been this organization. It's just like, all right, well, they tried. I took Farhan's credit, made a bunch of moves to try, cost him a couple draft picks in the second and third round, which we'll see if that's worth it. Hasn't been worth it. But yeah, I think if you realistically, like, do you think this team is going to accomplish anything this year? I don't think you can say that with a straight face. I think there are plenty of young, enticing pitching options. And if you can sell Snell for, I don't know, anything that is theoretically promising, anyone that's under the age of like 28, that you say, okay, maybe this guy can hit a ball. He can hit 15 to 20 home runs a year and bat over 250 and, play a position we need. Like, if they could get a shortstop prospect, that's really coveted and really hard to get. And they just missed on one in the draft. I think that would be worth it. Every time I think about the Giants, I think, meh, that's their vibe. I don't think they're going to swing for the fences in either direction. And we're just going to have a second half where they maybe make a little run and they get to 500 and they're probably in the wild card race, and then they miss out by like 3 games, but it really feels like 8 or 9.
Last one. There's a report on Twitter tonight that the Warriors remain very much in the driver's seat for Lauri Markkanen. There's a lot of talk about Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski. I don't want to move either, but I'd remove Podziemski before I'd move Kuminga. Podziemski's a great rebounding 6'3" combo guard who's not really a point guard and he's not really a 2 guard. I like him, but I'd rather move Podziemski than Kuminga. I'd love to move picks and move neither of those guys and just get Kuminga, just get Markkanen. But what do you think? Podziemski, Kuminga, you can keep one. Which one would you rather keep?
It's like, I think the logical answer is keep Kuminga, right? But Podziemski's basketball IQ is something I don't think Kuminga will ever have. Like, Podziemski knows how to play the game because he doesn't have those same tools that someone like Kuminga has. Like, he's had to learn and grind and just do the dirty stuff that he does so well that, like, he's going to be a positive player for you almost every night. Like, his shot is something that needs to improve. Should he abandon the hook shot? I love the hook shot way too much to ever tell anyone to abandon it. But it's maybe not the most efficient. I kind of love it, honestly, for being honest. Kuminga is a guy that, like, I know calling someone a winning player it's like, what does that even mean? But, like, he is not a good shooter. I think I've made this comment. I think he needs to be like, try and emulate like Dwayne Wade, like be a slasher, post scorer, which is not something the NBA has really rewarded all that much, being a guy who's sort of in between. So yeah, I think the logical answer is keep Kuminga, but like, I think they would be a better team if they had Markkanen and Podziemski versus Markkanen and Kuminga.
Either way, to me, they're not quite a title contender, even with Markkanen. And I love Markkanen. But I like what the Warriors are talking about doing, but I like him, but I don't think he makes them a title contender. I think he makes them a playoff team, and maybe a team that could win a series or two. But I'd be shocked if that team got beyond the conference finals. But you never know. You never know. I mean, you need other things good to happen. But I do like Markkanen, 7-footer, in his prime, all-star, knows how to play, can really shoot the ball. I think he would fit perfectly next to Draymond Green. We have one super here from Roberto Davis. He says, hey, Krug, wouldn't Trent Williams be taking training camp practices off at this point in his career anyway? Yeah, he would. He would get a lot of days off, and he still will get a lot of days off. But I mean, I think at this point, I think we all kind of understand, it's like Trent Williams has got no more guaranteed money in his deal, and he just wants to make sure that he's taken care of. And because he is Trent Williams and he's one of the greatest offensive linemen in the history of the game, they're going to take care of him. It's just really as simple as that. And, I don't know exactly when it will happen, but my guess is within 10 days. That'll be my guess. What do you think, Jake?
I agree. Yep, I'm with you. I think that's something that you can't let linger too long. I think the ideal, after this first block of practices, get it done over the weekend, come back in on Monday. You've got him there. I think that would be their ideal. I could see it going longer, but I think you're right. Less than 10 days. They need him in the building. It's just, it's not a good look to have your leader, your most important offensive lineman, arguably the most important player on your team, genuinely, not in the building. So I think they'll get something done.
What is the big story tomorrow at 49er camp? I will be there day 3, second day on the field. Probably going to have to work on some lotion, maybe a cap. What do you think? What's going to be the big story tomorrow? Is there going to be a big story tomorrow?
I don't think there will be, which is lame. Maybe something will happen.
Maybe added practice or no?
I don't think so. Because I think the thing is, like, you wait until the second block to do that because you might do it. I think they're allowed to do it by day 3 or day 4, but you start to wind down by the 3rd or 4th day. So I think they'll probably wait until the next block. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love to see pads come on. Need to see the Nuge versus Evan Anderson. Got to see some meatball sub, just going at it.
That was if there were two guys that were, give me something deep, a deep dive on the first couple games of camp, a couple practices at camp. Shaquille Brown, who they just signed away from the Tennessee Titans, who they wanted as an undrafted free agent, and Evan Anderson, who they gave $380,000 or $280,000 of guaranteed money to, pry him away from other teams that wanted him as an undrafted free agent. I thought both those guys looked awesome today. I don't know what you thought, but those guys looked really, really, really good. Brown has got this explosive lower body. Let me see if I can find this here. As far as Brown's got the explosive lower body, but then Anderson is got to be close to 350, but he really moves well. All right, here we go. Here's Sorensen.
Excited, really getting after.
Talking about these two young bucks on the defensive line spot. Here we go.
Nick, what's your early impression of Anderson and Brown, the two backup defensive tackles?
Awesome. Excited, really getting after it. It's still early, but they haven't been here too long. But you see the power, you see the explosiveness kind of in their body. Really want to see what they can do as they grow into it. But you've seen the athletic ability along with those heavy hands too, right? Brown, he's coming off an injury, but you don't really notice it because he can still bend and be explosive and use his hands. So we'll just see where those guys go. They're young, and they're new to our system too.
Yeah, watch for those guys. Evan Anderson on the right there, Shaquille Brown on the left. Watch for those two guys because they're just big and strong and athletic. And Anderson, even at God, I mean, they said he was 315. He ain't 315. He's got to be close to 350. But you know what? He's just got this unbelievable footwork for a guy 350. And Jake, I'll tell you, man, finding good players at key spots, and defensive tackle is one of them, is just absolutely like found money. And I thought both those guys looked like, man, if I'm Kevin Givens, if I'm Kalia Davis, if I'm one of these guys playing, the interior spots, you better get ready to play this summer, because these two guys both have the ability to take a job. No doubt.
Yeah, I think it's going to be wide open. Anderson got a nice pressure today, which I didn't really think was in his bag. I think it was, against one of their terrible, way backup left guards, but he still got there and still made the quarterback get it out. I think it's going to be wide open at defensive tackle, because you've got Hargrave, Collins, and then honestly, it's all up for grabs. I don't care if you're Jordan Elliott or Kevin Givens or who you are. I think it's wide open.
Yeah. And, they may keep 10 D linemen, 5 tackles maybe. But still, when you see Evan Anderson move the way he's moving at the size that he is, if you're a D-line coach, that's exciting. And Shaquille Brown is just he's got so much power in his lower body that when he plays with leverage and starts bull rushing and gets his hands firing, and he starts, just start pounding those legs down into the ground, it's like there's no offensive lineman that can stand in front of this guy. He's just incredibly strong. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. I want everybody to go over to Jake's channel and give him a like and subscribe over there. Follow him on X at Hutch Diesel. He does great work working for Odyssey. Jake, we'll see you back down there tomorrow for more Sunburn. Always good to talk to you.
That's right. Appreciate you, Larry. See you tomorrow, man.
Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon'